dalan so'y kung ikaw ay makalera. Alanningan natin patene, kung kapag ikaw nagtate. Alanningan natin patene, kung kapag ikaw nagtate. Mama ko pangalinakuan mo din po, tunga sa napaya mo. Kung itataka mo damay, tamahin ng iyong sa patay. Kung itataka mo damay, tamahin ng iyong sa patay. Ayos te diba, anya mo damapya. Alikalam makaralola sinakalola. Alikalam makaralola sinakalola. Ay dadali panglay mo kornerma, mabatil nga ni Italay, kapamot mo daray na babay. Mabatil nga ni Italay, kapamot mo daray na babay. Alanningan natin patene, kung kapag ikaw nagtate. Alanningan natin patene, kung kapag ikaw nagtate. Mama ko pangalinakuan mo din po, tunga sa napaya mo. Kung itataka mo damay, tamahin ng iyong sa patay. Kung itataka mo damay, tamahin ng iyong sa patay. Ayos te diba, anya mo damapya. Alikalam makaralola sinakalola. Alikalam makaralola sinakalola. Ay dadali panglay mo kornerma, mabatil nga ni Italay, kapamot mo daray na babay. Mabatil nga ni Italay, kapamot mo daray na babay. Aranninganan patenen ko kapag ikaw nagkate. Aranninganan patenen ko kapag ikaw nagkate. Mama ko pangalit ako natin ko, nga sa napaya mo. Kundi tataka mo damay tamagin ng nuno sa patay. Kundi tataka mo damay tamagin ng nuno sa patay. Ayos se orte diba, anya mo tamapya. Alikalam saralula sinahadol yono nato. Alikalam saralula sinahadol yono nato. Ay tatay pamilay mo kornero na mabatil na ni Italay kapagod mo daray na babay. Mabatil na ni Italay kapagod mo daray na babay.
Dadako na po tayo sa 3rd Philippine Arts Summit Lecture Series. Salubungin po natin si Direktor Miguelita Alonzo sa kanyang topic na pamana ng lahi sa panahon ng pandemya.
Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Ako po si Miguelita Alonzo, kapwa lingkod bayan ng ating masipag, ubod ng ganda, at mahusay na direktor, Dr. Flordelisa Villaseñor. Nais ko rin batiin ang ating tagapamuno dahil sa kanyang natatanging dedikasyon sa pagpapalaganap ng sining at kultura. Kaya narito tayo ngayon, hindi man tayo magkakaharap, subalit tayo nagkakaugnayan sa pamamagitan ng virtual. Si Attorney Tranquil Salvador III. Mabuhay po kayo, sir. Mabuhay din po lahat ng mga kasapi ng tagapagtaguyod ng sining at kultura ng Pilipinas. Ako po ay naatasan na talakayin ang mga kaugalian at tradisyon nating mga Pilipino. Ang mga Pilipino ay nakilala dahil sa ating mga magagandang ugali, kaugalian at tradisyon. Tayong mga Pilipino, isa sa mga katangian natin ay ang pagiging magalang. Ginagalang natin ang batas. Tayo mga Pilipino ay ginagalang ang batas dahil alam natin na isinasanggalang nito ang ikabubuti ng mas nakararami. Gumagalang tayo sa ating matatanda. Kaya nga tayo nagmamano nung araw, pag alis, bago umalis tayo nagmamano, at pagdating tayo nagmamano sa ating mga magulang o sa nakatatanda. Pinapakita nito na sumusunod tayo sa batas. Mga health protocols na mask, iwas, hugas dahil nasa pandemya tayo. At na ipagpapatuloy pa rin natin ang ating magagandang kaugalian. Pagiging magalang natin ay nakikita rin sa ating mga pananalita. Kaya nga tayo gumagamit ng po at opo kapag kausap natin ang mga matatanda o nakakatanda sa atin. Sa ating mga magulang, lola at lolo, kahit na hindi natin kakilala, pag mas nakakatanda sa atin, kapag kausap natin sila, tayo ay nagpupo at opo. Pero, meron nga ho obserbasyon na unti-unting nawawala na ito. Kahit nung wala pa ang pandemya, parang unti-unti pong nawawala. At ito nga po ay hamon na rin sa ating mga nakakatanda. Tayo mga kasapi nitong samahang ito, na sana marinig din ng mga bata na ginagamit pa rin natin ito. Dahil di nga ba ang sabi, kung ano ang nakikita ng bata sa matatanda, sa mata ng bata, ito ay tama. Tayo ay maging huwaran sana para mapanatili natin ang mga magagalang na pananalita. Ang mga magagalang na salita ay ginagamit natin sa pang-araw-araw nating pakikipag-usap. Kapag tayo nagkakamali, sinasabi natin, pasensya na po, paumanhin po, naantala po kami. Kapag nakikita natin ang ating mga amo, mga nakakatanda sa atin, at yung mga kaibigan, binabati natin, magandang umaga sa umaga, magandang gabi sa gabi. Ganun po tayo kagalang. Maliban sa pamamagitan nito ay naging magalang tayo sa mga matatanda, naging malapit din tayo sa isa't isa. Sana pagkatapos ng pandemyang ito ay muli nating maibalik. Dahil kaugalian man natin talaga ang pagiging malapit sa isa't isa, lalo na sa pamilya natin, ginagalang natin, maging ang mga kapatid natin nakakatanda, ginagamit natin ang ate sa mas matandang o kapatid natin na mas matanda sa ating babae, at kuya sa kapatid nating lalaki na mas matanda sa atin. Minsan kapag nakipag-usap tayo, ginagamit din natin ng ate at kuya, parang lambing doon sa inuutosan natin. Yun, ganun din tayo ka-sweet. Isa pang magandang kaugalian natin ay ang ating pagiging malapit sa isa't isa. Malapit tayo sa mga miyembro ng ating pamilya. Kung ano man ang ating mga pangarap, naisin at adhikain, madalas may kinalaman ito sa pamilya. Tama po, madasalin din tayo mga Pilipino. Kaya nga, sabi natin, nauuna ang Diyos pagkatapos pamilya. Yung ating mga dasal ay nauuna dyan, yung pasasalamat natin sa Panginoon. Pangalawa, yung mga hinihiling natin ay may kinalaman sa pamilya. Yun yung magandang kaugalian natin sa ating pamilya. At marami po tayong magagandang kaugalian. Tayo mga Pilipino ay kilala na malugod sa pagtanggap ng mga bisita. Kaya nga gusto ng mga dayuhan na pumunta sa Pilipinas, hindi lamang sa mga tanawin, kundi pati na rin sa ating mga kaugalian. Isa na riyan ay pagiging malugod sa bisita. Pagdating ng bisita, sinasabi natin, tuloy po kayo. Parang feeling mo, welcome na welcome ka. Hindi ba? Pagkatapos, kung mayroon tayong kinakain, inaalok natin sa pagkain, o binibigyan natin ng pagkain at inumin ng ating bisita. Kapag kinakailangan nilang magpalipas ng isang gabi, kapag galing sila sa malayo, hindi ba? Pinapagamit natin ang isang kwarto natin sa ating bahay. Ganun tayo kalugod sa pagtanggap ng mga bisita. Ngayon, hindi pa natin magagawa. Subalit, kung tayo magkaroon ng new normal, sana manumbalik yung pagiging malugod natin sa pagtanggap ng ating mga panauhin o bisita. Sa kasalukuyan nga, mayroon tayong hinaharap na pandemya. At ang kaugalian natin o ang tradisyon ng bayanihan ay nakikita pa rin. Hindi ba yung community pantry, isa na rin makabagong pamamaraan ng pagpapakita ng pagtutulungan natin sa gitna ng mga pagsubok sa buhay. Tinutulungan natin ang mga kapwa natin Pilipino na nangangailangan. Yung mga may kaya ay tumulong sa mga kapuspalan sa gitna ng pandemya ito. Talaga namang masayahin ng Pilipino, di ba? Isa pa na nagpapakita kung gaano tayo kalapit bilang magkapamilya. Yung pamamanhika na isa din tradisyon na maganda sa ating mga Pilipino. Ang pamilya ng lalaki ay formal na hinihingi ang kamay ng babaeng sinisinta sa pamanhikan. Ang tagaharap, ang pamilya ng lalaki at pamilya ng babae, kasama ang kanilang mga kamag-anak at malalapit sa kanilang mga pamilya. At dito rin pinag-uusapan ng pamilya ng dalawang nagbabalak magpakasal ang mga detalye ng plano nila sa pagpapakasal. Yan po ay isang magandang tradisyon na sana may pagpatuloy pa natin. Sa kasalukuyan, wala po tayong maraming seremonya sa kasal, pero sa totoo lang, ang kasal ay isang magandang pagtitipon ng mga magkapamilya. Isa pang magandang tradisyon na meron tayo ay ang paghaharana. Sa probinsya, ginagawa pa rin ito. Sa kasalukuyan, may gumagawa nito gamit ang makabagong teknolohiya. Uulitin ko ang mga magandang kaugalian na meron tayo: pagiging magalang sa mga matatanda, pagmamano, okay? Pagsasabi ng po at opo, pagtawag ng ate at kuya sa nakakatanda, bayanihan, okay? Paghaharana, pamamanhikan, nabanggit ko yan. Banggitin ko na rin na ang mga Pilipino ay kilala sa buong mundo dahil sa natatanging kulturang Pilipino. Narito ang ilang halimbawa ng katangian ng mga Pilipino: madasali, nabanggit ko na yan, masipag, masayahin, mapagbigay, matulungin, masigasig, magalang. At hamon po sa atin na maipagpapatuloy ito sa susunod na henerasyon. Kaya tayo po sana ay maging instrumento sa pagpapalaganap ng ating sining at kultura. Maraming salamat po.
Pakinggan po natin si Dr. Mary Rajeline Javier Busmente sa topic po niyang Colonial Watchtowers of Nautical Highway.
Magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. Sa ngayong araw na to at ngayong oras na to, ako po ay magdidiscuss tungkol sa ating Colonial Watchtowers of the Philippine Nautical Highway. My name is Architect Mary Rajeline Javier Busmente. My focus is heritage restoration. And today, our discussion will be about the Spanish colonial times. So, to continue, our initial discussion will be discussed through this outline: the watchtowers and the lighthouses. So, we'll begin with a discussion about Father Agustin de San Pedro, after which we'll be discussing about the forts of Romblon, the watchtowers, and cotas, or /kuta, taguan in Tagalog. And then we have the Cebu and Bohol watchtowers as well, and the lighthouses, which were supposed to be built during the late 1800s. However, bigla tayong na-turn over during the Treaty of Paris to the United States of America. And the last but not the least is a short discussion about frictoriae, or should I say frictories, about the learnings from the Greeks. So in the beginning, when Father Agustin de San Pedro, otherwise known as El Padre Capitan because he was helping a lot of natives protect themselves from the Moro raids, well, he was born in 1599. However, he died early. He died young. And this is his monument, which is presently standing at the Cathedral of Romblon. So let's continue to talk about Father Agustin de San Pedro. Interestingly, he studied military tactics and I think mathematics in the University of Salamanca. After which, he entered into the convent of the Agustinian Recoletos. Yet, they did not like him. That was in 1619. They did not like him very much because he was a priest, yet he wanted to go into military. And he was very interested in this. His superiors were against it. And then later on, he was ordained as a priest already in Mexico. By the way, he was born in Portugal. So in 1623, he was sent to the Philippines. In fact, together with some of those who were martyred in Japan. So in 1629 to 1638, records supposedly show that he had stayed in Himologan. Himologan was known as Cagayan today. So it was previously known as Himologan, and this was the location of the fights with Sultan Kudarat. I think it was also the root issue or story wherein the Christian Moro differences had strongly begun because of the protection of Father Agustin de San Pedro against the Muslim raids. So there were times when he was able to beat the Muslims from the raids that they would go into Himolocan. And then in 1638 to 1642, he was sent to Butuan, and his palisade or the forts that he built there, since they were biodegradable materials made up of wood, and Butuan is known as a marshy land which had changed its map for about 9 times, 9 episodes of changing of its coastline. So we no longer have evidences of this palisade as well as the one in Cagayan de Oro. So in 1644 to around 1651, he was focused in Romblon. So if we'll take a look at the Romblon's aerial map, we will notice that there are a bunch of ruins of fuerzas or forts and cotas surrounding the islands of Romblon, which is a very busy nautical highway. And during the Spanish colonial times, there were a lot of Moro raids, and they would take natives as slaves at the Moro areas. So, when El Padre Capitan started to build the forts as well as the watchtowers and the bulwark of Cathedral of San Jose, these were used to watch out for the Moro raids. So during that time, if you look at the positions of the Onti ruins, the Fuerza de San Jose, which is within the complex of San Nicolas de Tolentino, located in Banton Island, and Cota de San Jose, which is located in Corcuera Island, and then the main island, which have the twin forts of Fuerza de San Andres and Fuerza San Antonio. And lastly, Kota or Kuta of Bantayan Gintigian. These are the ones that we have discovered. There might be other ruins within Romblon. So these are the following fuerzas, watchtowers, and lists of cotas, and the timelines that are possibly the time they were built. So we can see here in the list that there are some forts or fuerzas that were built during the time that he was around. Although when I did study the records of Cota de San Jose and the archives, I have researched in the archives of Spain, and they did say that there's nothing to be found about the Cota de San Jose, so they're not sure if he was the one who had it built. But the local stories surround that it was him who had it built. So this is the view of the restored version of Fort San Pedro, which is actually Beside it is another fort. On its left side is standing Fort San Antonio, which is also built on top of a mountain. So this is another one, which is the Fuerza de San Jose in Banton Island. And the bulwark or the bell tower of Catedral de San Jose in Romblon, Romblon, you can also see a very good view of the waters. So, moving forward, I'd like to also examine Cebu and Bohol watchtowers, or at least the ones that we have seen so far. We have in our list Bantayan Sahari in Mandaue, Bantayan Sahari in Catmon, the Block House or El Gran Baluarte de Boljoon, the Obong Ruins, and also Baluarte de Santander Ruins. So these are the identified watchtowers of Cebu. If you look at closely, these are really interesting portions where we have the Bantayan Sahari and then the Batayan Sahari sa Katmon and then the Obang Ruins. So this is also an archival photo of Father Julian Bermejo, supposedly the one who was responsible for building the watchtowers of the Cebu area. So this is the archival photo taken in 1936 of Bantayan Sahari in Mandaue. This is now really quite dense because Mandaue City has a lot of people living in it presently. And then the Bantayan Sahari in Katmon, which is made up of coral stones also. And the Baluarte de Santander and the El Gran Baluarte de Boljoon, which is known to have been built by Father Bermejo, who is known to have been the one to build the other watchtowers as well. So apparently this blockhouse he had used to, well, the crenellation seems to show as if that it would contain weaponry. So I think this place was also built for storing um, materials and supplies that would help them. And there were stories also that it was used as a as a prison for the lower portion of the building. This structure stands very near the Boljoon Church. Then there is also the Obong Ruins, which is very near Dalagit in Cebu. Actually, there are more watchtowers in Cebu, but the ones that we have been able to identify are the following. So, moving forward, there are also watchtowers around the coastline of Bohol and the following: Punta Cruz, Maribojoc, Dawis Watchtower, and Panglao are seen in the following slides. Punta Cruz Watchtower is triangular. I have found that it was still very strong and standing even if the whole of Bohol's landscape had changed. When I visited after the earthquake in 2013, this watchtower was really still sturdy. And around it, even if around it the coastline had changed, the floor level of or the soil level of Maribojoc had ultimately gotten bigger, yet the watchtower was still standing. And then you also have the beautiful and romanticized version of a watchtower, which is the one located in Panglao. It is hexagon shaped, and there is clay roof tiles on top. But during the earthquake in 2013, the roof tiles had fallen down. It was restored already. And then the last but not the least that are in the list is the Dawis Watchtower, which is also very near the coastline. But if you examine the map, which is close to Cebu, you will notice that there is an interesting connection between the watchtowers of Cebu and the watchtowers of Bohol. So, in the late 1800s, the Spaniards had invested heavily in the colonized areas. I think the listings appear in Faros Español de Ultramar. So, the Faros, or the watchtowers or lighthouses, were built by Spain in colonized countries such as Peru and others. So there are 27 major light stations and 17 luces locales or local lights and 14 additional lighthouses built on more remote islands of the archipelago. There was a total of 58. The Americans inherited it during the turnover. Many of these lighthouses still survive, but others have gone to ruin, sadly. I'm sorry, the one that was actually designed by engineer Magin Purse and Purse was Cape Boqueador, and then Cape Engano was a typical uh, brick construction, but the interesting one was the one ordered from France, which is the one in Poro Point. That is the original structure, but you will not see that in Poro Point largely the way you would see the existing or the present or the current lighthouse that has been built there. So a lot of these old um, lighthouses were functioning really quite well until such time that they were replaced by funding from the Japanese government with very good intentions. However, what happened was when the Philippines started building new lighthouses, these existing lighthouses had turned into ruin because some of them were vandalized, some of their lenses were stolen, and some of the lanterns were also in ruins. But some are protected and used for tourism purposes. But they were actually working quite well um, prior to such turnover. Now, interestingly, we also have here a photo of the very first lighthouse tower in the Philippines, which was actually built in 1846. It was also the first light station in 1642, known as Farola, but it's now lost but it's actually called now as Parola in Tondo. It was demolished in 1992 for sad, unknown, unfortunate reasons. So let me just read through here what this whole plan was. It's actually Plan General de Alumbrado de Marítimo de las Costas del Arquipelago de Filipino, the master plan for lighting of the maritime coast of the Philippine archipelago. The goal was to build 55 lighthouses. So that was a plan of Spain. So we have here Cape Engano. You can see the stone structure. and Cape Bohiador in Ilocos, and the romanticized Poro Point. But the very interesting French designed steel structure, which is actually similar to, or should we say, a brother to the Eiffel Tower. Then we have Cape Santiago from Batangas, which was donated by Santiago Sobel. Uh, it was around a hectare in land or more for the lighthouse keeper and the lighthouse. Later on, it also had a lot of stories. They wanted to have memorandum of understanding with the local government and some institutions, yet that didn't work out. So right now, it's still, um, I think it is now with the Philippine Coast Guard. So hopefully, it can be turned into or protected, turned into a functioning structure. Then we have the beautiful and romantic looking Couple Island Watchtower. Actually, we have a lot of lighthouses and watchtowers. So moving forward, we'd like to discuss about the Frictorier, or should we say the anglicized or English version, which is the Frictories. So this was a ancient Greek system. So in ancient Greece, these victories were actually computed with a proper distance as so that the next mountain can communicate with the next mountain and so on and so forth, wherein they would light the fires so that they can send the proper messages quickly so you can actually communicate within an hour with using these victories. So the Victoria, which is a Greek word, was actually a semaphore system used in ancient Greece. So the Victoriae, it were actually towers built on selected mountain tops, computed accordingly so that one tower would be visible to the next tower, usually within a range of 20 miles away. The towers were used for the transmission of a specific prearranged message, and flames were lit on one tower and to the next tower in succession, also with lit flames. So this is actually telecommunications of ancient Greeks. It is considered to have been invented in the 3rd century by Cleoxenos and Democritus, and it is also known as a digital system, quinary of 2 bits, supposedly have been conceived by Palamedes, which was another tactic used for the fall of Troy. Now, interestingly, the Byzantine system of beacons were also taken from such. So we can see here Mount St. Auxentius moving forward to Bethania, to another place towards Mount Isamos, but actually it did start from Lulon in Cilicia. So we can see here the lighting system. One lit a message to the next, and the next one will light another message so that the other area would note exactly the same message, and it spread to the whole system of beacons so that everyone is aware of what is going on. They had particular styles of messages to send the warning. A modern experiment was actually conducted using the system of the ancient Greeks' semaphore as well as the Byzantine beacon system. which was established by Leo the mathematician who had studied the ancient literature of the Greeks. So they tried it present day, and within 1 hour, they were able to transmit the message that they wanted. So if we're looking here at the Romblon nautical towers, we would notice that if we started a fire or the victories, we would be able to send a message of warning, as well as if we started to send the messages in the Cebu and Bohol watchtowers as well, if there were more raids coming up. Thus, El Padre Capitan and all the others who had established Father Bermejo, the Jesuit priest who had established the Bohol watchtowers and Cebu watchtowers, and Father Agustin de San Pedro's contribution towards the idea of the semaphore as well as the victory system. Probably that's why they have been able to establish a very strong protection system. They are prepared when the Moro raids were coming up. So thank you very much for listening to this short presentation on the Spanish colonial times when we had our initial colonial Philippine nautical highway. Salamat po.
I-welcome po natin si Dr. Laura C. Fermo sa kanyang discussion tungkol sa The Economics of Arts and Culture.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Fermo. I am a senior economist from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, and I'm here to discuss with you the economics of arts and culture. This is a lecture which is part and parcel of the TSKPs or the Tagapagtaguyod ng Sining at Kultura ng Pilipinas 2021 Philippine Arts Summit. Again, good morning to everyone. Let me begin my presentation. Individuals and organizations in arts and culture are resilient and entrepreneurial businesses. They employ people locally, purchase goods and services from within the community, and market and promote their regions. Art organizations are rooted locally. These are jobs that cannot be shipped overseas. Like most industries, the COVID-19 pandemic left a measurable financial impact on the arts, erasing many of the gains made during the pre-pandemic years. The biggest effect of recessions, especially the current one, is on attendance and audience spending. Inevitably, as people lost jobs and worried about infection rates, health safety, and about losing their own businesses, arts attendance, like attendance to sports events and leisure travel and even tourism, waned as well. Yet, even with the downward trend in the economy, some communities saw an increase in arts spending and in employment. As United Nations would put it, culture fosters creativity and communication, ensures the well-being of communities, and improves self-worth and esteem among individuals. But what is culture? In simplest terms, culture is a collective identity of a society. It encompasses arts, laws, belief systems, basically anything a person obtains that influences the way his or her society functions. Culture also plays a key role in establishing individual identity, as shared stories and experiences form the middle ground that unifies a society's members. In the perspective of the United Nations, this is indeed what it conveys. Over time, culture has become something of a commodity. becoming the basis of a growing economic segment in the world that can be defined as the totality of individuals and businesses that produce the cultural, artistic, and innovative products and services. This cultural industry was referred to as such during the 1940s, but eventually rebranded as the creative industry to make it broader or more all encompassing. And this term was actually originated from the United Kingdom and Australia just 5 decades later. The term creative was deemed more appropriate given that cultural products and services nowadays focus more on fostering creativity, innovation, and technological change in conjunction with promoting cultural identity. Creative industries also produce a unique commodity in that they allow peoples from other countries to experience different cultures. So, in a sense, as a commodity, creative arts and culture products are of a different nature. Philippine creative industries are important cultural and economic assets to any country for that matter, as they foster creativity and communication, ensure the well being of communities, and improve self worth and esteem among its members. That being said, creative products and services are not given due importance yet for the longest time due to the prevailing perception that STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, is the key to a country's economic success. As a result, the Philippines' creative industries continue to be a largely untapped sector, one that experts say can potentially drive the country's future economic growth. Compounding matters is the fact that creative industries in the country are still informal and loosely structured, which provide a host of limitations, such as lack of data and a number of people like artists, craftsmen, or cultural workers that are unaccounted for and whose output also are not accounted for in the computation of the value added for the sector. Now, what comprises creative industries? Creative industries cover a wide range of industries and sectors. One kind of categorization would subdivide them into four. First of which is arts and culture, which would include art, books, crafts, film, music, performance, and even video games. Design is a second category, which would comprise architecture, design, fashion, and toys and games. Media is another grouping, which would cover advertising, press, TV, and radio. And last but definitely not the least would be innovation, which would include research and development and software. In the Philippine context, creative industries, as used by government agencies, have been subdivided into six different categories. But basically, they comprise the same kind of products or services that I have mentioned earlier. So, what was essentially added from the previous categorization are the separation between printing and publishing or print media and audiovisuals, and another category which is creative services, within which animation and gaming, advertising and graphics, and recreational services have been incorporated. However, way one would choose to define creative industries, the term must nonetheless encourage educators to rethink the value of creativity in the curricula. Australia, for example, has started to emphasize the value of arts by adopting a STEAM mindset: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics in schools. In fact, in 2019, at the 74th session of the UN General Assembly, 2021 was declared the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. Indonesia was the main sponsor of the proposal, which was presented by a global grouping of countries, including Australia, China, India, Indonesia, Mongolia, the Philippines, and Thailand. However, as you would expect, any strides that were made within under this program may have been stalled somehow when the pandemic struck. So let's look at the performance of Philippine creative industries based on whatever data is currently available. So, as you can see, data for the creative industries remain to be sparse. We don't have yet a time series that where we can actually look at the growth or performance of the sector. And basically, these years I'm showing you in these two tables and the charts represent different mapping studies, which means they have different definitions for how they collated information on the creative industries. Nonetheless, looking at these mapping initiatives, we see that the creative industries have been contributing a fairly substantial um, part of GDP, 4.8% in 2008, coming from the organization World Intellectual Property, and from the NCCA, CCP, and the ABCB and Bayan Foundation in 2011, they are indicating that contribution to GDP has been 13.8% in 2006. PIDS have released two reports in 2008 and 2009 where they indicate the contribution of the sector to be 4.3 and 5.4. And the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, IPOPHIL, in 2010 has reported it to be at 7.3% of GDP. So if you see this, the chart, the lower part of the slide, um, total creative economy is showing a substantial increase by 2010, coming from its indicators in 2006. And this is uh, not so much the case actually for radio and television, for software and databases, which suffered a decline, but radio and television also indicated increases in terms of economic contribution. Now, very recently, the Philippine Statistics Authority has released information on creative industries. This is coming from the Census of Philippine Businesses and Industry. They released this just this January 2021, covering 2018 data, and they are now comparing it with 2012 data. You can see here, in terms of industry description, the activities that were covered by the census. It would include creative arts and entertainment activities, libraries, archives, museums, and other cultural activities, gambling and betting activities, sports activities, and other amusement and recreation activities. So if you see here, overall, when you look at arts, entertainment, and recreation, the growth in 2018 rather, coming from the 2012 data, was at 22.9%. However, when you focus in on creative arts and entertainment activities, there is a huge decline of 44.6% in 2018. That is just in terms of employment. In terms of value added, the arts, entertainment, and recreation sector as a whole, coming from PSA data, grew by as much as 161% in 2018. Again, this is in terms of value added, or this is the total output of the sector minus the intermediate inputs. However, when we focus in again on creative arts and entertainment activities in terms of value added, there was a huge decline as well of 82.5% in 2018. This is the same picture when you look at libraries, archives, museums, and other cultural activities, which declined by 15.3% in 2018 versus 2012. sorry, going back, looking at the data in terms of share to the services sector. Now, this is essentially what we pointed out earlier, that the creative industries is still largely an untapped sector. In terms of its share, it's still very small in terms of how it can potentially contribute. I would like to point out, however, that a limitation of the PSA datasets is that they count only the contribution of registered businesses with more than 20 people. So this means they are only covering formal organizations because they need to be registered, and they only included in the survey those with more than 20 people. Obviously, they do not include those establishments which has fewer than 20 people, and more so, they do not cover creative freelance workers as well as remittances sent home by creative workers overseas. So, looking at the numbers, gross value added in 2012 of the sector as a share to services was only 0.81%. In 2018, it increased to 1.2%. In terms of employment, the share of the creative industries to services sector employment was 3.1% in 2012, and in 2018, it was 3.2%. Again, another caveat in the data from the PSA is that 50% of survey respondents come from other amusement and recreation activities, and 34% come from gambling and betting activities. In fact, in terms of value added, 90.9% of the 2018 value added is accounted for by gambling and betting activities. So, in a sense, looking at this as an indicator for arts and culture activities may be a little bit misleading because it is dominated by gambling and betting activities in terms of the survey of the PSA. When we look at another source of information, the 2019 Global Innovation Index report, for example, indicate that the creative output sub-index for the Philippines is a score of 27.7. And this means that the Philippines just follows after Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. And the Philippines would rank 51 in that Innovation Index report. It is even higher than Indonesia's, Cambodia's, and Brunei's Creative Output Sub-Index. Additionally, the creative goods exports from that report indicate that creative exports from the Philippines is about 7% of Philippine total trade. So essentially, that gives us a picture that it should be more than just the 0.81 or the 1.1 share to the services gross value added for the sector if we take into account the entire coverage, or as defined internationally, what the creative industries are, which I had shown in about 2 or 3 slides earlier. So what is the way forward for the industry? The PDP, the Philippine Development Plan, rather, for the year 2017 to 2022 has finally recognized creative industries as a key aspect of its strategic framework for development. Under the 2017 to 2022 Philippine Development Plan, the creative industries fall under the malasakit areas of development. Secondly, in 2016, the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines was also formed. So it seems that the private sector has started to organize itself better as well. This is a private sector advocacy group which is formed by creative industry leaders and influencers. Third, the British Council was also very instrumental in promoting the creative industries. It has set in place creative hubs and centers in 2017. In addition, the UNESCO Creative Cities Initiative is also a light in the dark for the creative industry sector. Lastly, the Legislative Agenda and Creative Industries Act under House Bill number 8101 is also something to look forward to by the creative industries, if indeed it gets promulgated. Let me discuss in a bit of detail these four ways forward. As I mentioned, the creative industries is lodged under the Malasakit pillar of the PDP for 2017 to 2022. And under this program, the country intends to boost the development of Filipino creativity as tool for social cohesion and impetus for culture-based industry and creative economy, and to build public appreciation of Filipino creativity. Fulfilling such plans will require forward-thinking and thorough examination of the country's creative industries. While there have been studies dedicated to mapping out the Philippine creative economy, as I had shown you some slides earlier, other studies should have greater focus on technical, vocational, and manpower aspects, as well as the legislative agenda for promoting Philippine culture and values. There are several propositions made in this area. An establishment of the Department of Culture, a UNESCO Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, a proposed Modernization Act for the National Library of the Philippines, the Film Industry Development Act, and Komisyon sa Wikang Filipino or the Commission on the Filipino Language Act, which has already been promulgated, in fact, but which just needs to be promoted even further. Additionally, a second step in our way forward is the private initiative called the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines, or CECP. The CECP, working together with DTI, has developed a creative economy roadmap to 2030, setting an ambitious vision for the country. They state that by 2030, the Philippines will be the number one creative economy in the ASEAN in terms of size and value of creative industries, as well as in terms of the competitiveness and attractiveness of our creative talent and content in international markets. Among the priority sectors identified in this roadmap are advertising, 2, film, 3, animation, 4, game development, and 5, design, particularly graphic and digital design. So here's a table that summarizes that. It's a rather busy table, but essentially it's a six-pronged roadmap which they have divided into three um, uh, periods within the roadmap. Um, One is 2018 to 2020, which is the more short term or short run view. Then 2020 to 2025, and then for 2025 to 2030. Now, our third way forward, which I mentioned earlier, is the efforts or initiatives that have been done by the British Council. The British Council has created community-based creative hubs, and through this, they are providing fellowship grants in order to learn from success models in the UK. I am familiar in particular with one which they have included a particular establishment in designing shoes in Marikina, and they have already made a lot of strides in this aspect. Secondly, the UNESCO Creative Cities Network is also a means by which it could promote cooperation and between and among cities, and has identified creativity as as a strategic factor for sustainable urban development. In 2017, Baguio City became the first Philippine city to be part of the UNESCO Creative Cities Network. But so far, it still remains as the only one from the Philippines. Similar to UNESCO's World Heritage Sites list, the UCCN applicants go through a rigorous process of application and accreditation to demonstrate their current and planned programs for supporting development of creativity in their city. But we all know that Baguio is not the only city in the Philippines with a strong creative culture. Large cities such as Cebu and Quezon City are respectively known for design and film. Smaller cities like Angono and Dumaguete nurture their local artists, and craft towns such as Liliu, Lumban, Marikina, and Paete, which are well known domestically for quality goods such as shoes, wood carving, and piña embroidery. With this creative diversity, the Philippines should aim for the same level of creative recognition as achieved by other Asia Pacific countries. The Philippines should compare with China, Japan, and South Korea, which each have more than five UNESCO creative cities. The British Council notes that beyond being communal, caring, and capable of triggering value adding interactions, Philippine based creative hubs have also been distinctive in terms of their own entrepreneurialism amid fast changing circumstances. The creative hubs have maintained a high degree of fluidity and diversity throughout their existence, enabling flexible responses in the face of a crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Last on our way forward, and hopefully not the least, there is a proposed Creative Industries Act. This is under House Bill 8101, authored by Congressman Representative Christopher Toff de Venecia. This bill, if promulgated, promises a national creative industries development plan in order to help creative industries survive the current crisis, two, define and incentivize high potential creative industries, and three, promote policies both nationally and at a local community level. Congressman De Venecia notes that the Philippine Creative Industries Act is urgent, as it will help the creative sectors negatively affected by the pandemic to survive the crisis. It can also help sectors poised to grow to get the necessary assistance and incentive to strengthen their opportunities in the global markets. Creative Through this act, creative industries will be the manifestation of the intersection between creativity and the pursuit of economic growth through innovation. The bill is now pending with the Committee on Appropriations, where the proposed 5 million budget will be deliberated upon. After that, the bill will be set for approval and second reading, where the bill will be opened for questions to all members of Congress. The latest version of the Act was as of April 16, 2021. In my opinion, there is a need to break out of the paradigm of supporting only an exclusive arts education where only the best artistic talents are given scholarships and grants. Creative education should be made available to as wide a population as possible, starting with K to 12 and including college, postgraduate, and technical vocational programs. And as far as I know, TESDA has actually some beginnings in this area, but more needs to be done. As the UN 2013 Creative Economy Report demonstrates, unlocking the potential of the creative economy involves promoting the overall creativity of societies, affirming the distinctive identity of the places where it flourishes in clusters, improving the quality of life where it exists, enhancing local image and prestige, and strengthening the resources for imagining diverse new futures. So not only in terms of its economic contribution, but also in terms of the overall society's promotion of arts and culture is all contributing or all beneficial to the well-being of the Filipino people. With this, I close my discussion and thank you everyone for your time. Again, good day. Thank you.
Welcome po natin si FMA Misha Di Guzman na magsasalita po tungkol sa Filipino martial arts.
Pasimulaing lektura sa pag-aaral ng arnis. Sa pamamagitan ng tabak, bolo, kris, kampilan at iba't iba pang armas, kanilang dinaig ang mga hukbo ni Magellan sa pangunguna ni Lapu-Lapu. Noon, ang pagsasanay ng sining na ito ay sinasagawa lamang ng palihim. Tanging ang mga piling kamag-anak lamang ng arnesador ang nag-iensayo nito para gamitin sa pagtatanggol ng kanilang sarili. Kalaunan, ang sining ng arnis ay unti-unting lumawak at malayang naituro sa lahat ng Pilipino nag-iibig matuto nito. Si Ginoong Remy Presas, isa sa pinakamatandang maestro sa larangan ng arnis, ay kinilalang ama ng modernong paraan ng paggamit ng arnis. Dahil sa kanyang makabagong estilo ng pagtuturo at pag-ensayo, kung kaya't maging ang mga ibang lahi sa labas ng ating bansa ay nagsipagnasa na din matuto ng ating sining ang arnis. Sa tulong at dedikasyon ng mga dalubhasang maestro ng arnis, kung kaya't marami na sa ating mga kapwa Pilipino ang masayang nag-iensayo nito, hindi lamang upang ipagtanggol ang kanilang sarili, kundi upang ingatan din ang ating kultura ng pagtatanggol na minana sa ating mga ninuno, ang sining ng arnis. ika-11 ng Disyembre taong 2009, idineklara ng Batas Republika 78, Kabanata 50 na ang arnis ay ang ating pambansang laro. Ilan sa mga sandata o kasangkapang ginagamit ng isang nagsasanay o manlalaro ng arnis. Mga paraan ng pagbibigay pugay bago magpasimulang magsanay ng arnis. Pagpupugay gamit ang 2 baston. Tumayo ng maayos, igalaw ang kaliwang paa patungo sa kanan, kasabay ng paglalagay ng kanang kamay sa kaliwang dibdib. Handa, pugay. Muling igalaw ang kaliwang paa pabalik sa pinanggalingan nito. Pagpupugay gamit ang 1 baston. Igalaw ang kaliwang paa patungo sa kanan. Ilagay ang kanang kamay sa kaliwang dibdib at ibaba ang kaliwang kamay. Pagbibigay pugay na walang hawak na baston, mano-mano. Tumayo ng maayos, ilagay ang kanang kamay na nakasara sa kaliwang dibdib. Ilan sa mga uri ng paghawak ng baston. Normal o karaniwang paghawak ng baston. Ito ang paghawak sa bandang dulo ng baston na may distansya na kasinlaki ng isang kamao. Gitnang bahagi ng paghawak ng baston. Ito ang paghawak sa pagitan ng 2 baston. Pataob o pabaliktad na paghawak ng baston. Hinahawakan ng pabaliktad ang baston at may kaunting agwat sa bandang dulo na sinlaki ng isang kamao. Mga preparasyon o ehersisyo sa pagsasanay ng arnis. Pagkondisyon ng pulso at pagpapatatag ng mga braso. Abaniko. Hawakan ang dalawang baston sa pagitan ng mga ito. Saka pihit-pihitin na gaya ng pagpapaypay ng abaniko. Tiyaking hindi bubuka ang iyong mga daliri habang pinipihit ang dalawang baston. Paitaas at pababang pagpapaikot ng dalawang baston. Mula sa itaas ay paikutin ng 3 beses paibaba ang dalawang baston. Pagkatapos ay muli itong paikutin ng 3 beses patungo sa itaas. Tiyaking hindi bubuka ang iyong mga daliri habang pinaiikot ang iyong mga baston. Magkasalungat na pagpapaikot ng dalawang baston. Ito ay ang pagpapaikot ng dalawang baston sa magkaibang direksyon. Ang isa ay patungo sa itaas at ang isa naman ay patungo sa ibaba. 3 ikot sa bawat panig, sa kanan at sa kaliwa, paitaas at pababa. Tiyaking hindi bubuka ang iyong daliri habang pinaiikot ang iyong mga baston. Magkasalungat na pagpapaikot ng dalawang baston sa bandang balikat. Paikutin ang dalawang baston sa magkaibang direksyon. Ang isa ay patungo sa kanan, ang isa ay patungo sa kaliwa. Maging maingat sa pagpapaikot nito upang hindi matamaan ang iyong ulo. Tiyaking nananatiling nakasarado ang iyong mga daliri habang pinapaikot ang iyong mga baston. Iba't ibang paraan ng pagpapaikot at pagpapakondisyon sa paghawak ng baston. Simulaing pagsasanay ng solo baston. 5 palo gamit ang solo baston. Unang palo ay para sa kaliwang sentido. Ang pangalawang pagpalo ay para sa kanang sentido. Ang pangatlong palo ay para sa kaliwang tuhod. Ang pang-apat na palo naman ay para sa may kanang tuhod. At ang pang-5 ay para naman sa ulo. 5 pagsalag gamit ang solo baston. Una, salag para sa kaliwang sentido. Pangalawa, salag para sa kanang sentido. Pangatlo, salag para sa kaliwang tuhod. Pang-apat, salag para sa kanang tuhod. At pang-5, salag para sa ulo. Pasimulaing pagsasanay gamit ang 2 baston o doble baston. Isa ang galaw ng modernong sinawali. Paekis na sinawali. Dobleng sinawali. Pabalik na pagpalo ng sinawali. Forma o ayos sa pagsasanay ng sinawali.
3 forms of sinawali. Single 4, double 4, and double 4. Single 4, double 4, reverse 4.
Ang inyong napanood sa pagbabahaging ito ay ilan lamang sa mga uri ng pagsasanay sa panimulang pag-aaral o pag-iensayo sa sining ng arnis. Halina't tangkilikin natin ang ating kultura. Tayo na at mag-aral ng arnis. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay ang lahing Pilipino.
Tungkol po sa Reviving the Lost Heritage of Tuguegarao City, let us welcome Dr. Claire Calyangan.
Diyos ni Kamu, greetings from Tuguegarao. Our humble city is proud to be a part of the 3rd TSKP Philippine Arts Summit to promote the awareness and educate Filipinos on the value and importance of Philippine arts and culture. As member of the TSKP, we in the northeastern part of Luzon strongly takes part in the belief that a nation that treasures its cultural heritage is a nation that cherishes its history. We share in the hope that in propagating Philippine arts and culture and being part of this summit, we will be able to instill patriotism and love of country to the new generation of Filipinos in this part of the country. We commit in Tuguegarao City to do our part to promote, live, and pursue cultural programs and advocacies, especially in reviving the dying cultural heritage of the Ibanags. As some Ibanags would have it, who did not witness their own culture, which is slowly fading away. We thirst of the remnants of what used to be uniquely our own Ibanaga. Today in this summit, allow me to share with you a glimpse of the Ibanag culture and heritage of our beloved Tuguegarao City. Taos-puso po kaming nakikiisa sa lungsod ng Tuguegarao sa paanyayang ito ng TSKP sa 3rd Philippine Arts Summit na may temang Binhi, Sining at Kultura, Pamana ng Republika. To introduce very briefly, Tuguegarao City is the capital of the province of Cagayan and the regional center of Cagayan Valley. It has earned the distinction of being the center of excellence for higher education, science, and medicine in Region 2. Acclaimed as the regional primary growth center of the region, with an economy driven by a strong and vibrant tertiary sector, Tuguegarao serves as a springboard for economic affairs and enterprise activities within the entire region and even border municipalities of Ilocos Region and the Cordillera Administrative Region. The wide spectrum of social and economic infrastructure supports the role of Tuguegarao City as a regional trading center, the Regional Support Service Center for Agricultural Development, Tourism and Industrial Development, and the backbone to the Regional Industrial Center in Kawayan City, Isabela, and the Cagayan Special Economic Zone in Santa Ana, Cagayan. Leveraging on its location and the fastest growing base for intellectual and knowledge economy, the city is commended as the only digital city in Region 2. Tuguegarao, then a mission pueblo, became the provincial capital of Cagayan on May 24, 1839, and was converted into a city on December 18, 1999 by virtue of Republic Act 8755, or an act converting the municipality of Tuguegarao Cagayan province into a component city to be known as Tuguegarao City. Perhaps because of the influx of people and the mix of various cultures as well as modernization and development of the city, the culture and traditions are slowly fading. The celebration of the Art Summit couldn't have been very timely, especially at this time when the Tuguegarao city government is bent on promoting the revival of its laws, culture, and traditions. I said lost because the city is slowly losing its cultural heritage. Most importantly, the Ibanag dialect.
Arandigan at patene, kuya kani kawakate. Arandigan at patene, kuya kani kawakate. Tama ko pangalina ko ang masipo, at nga sa napaya ko.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, we admit that the Ibanag dialect is slowly fading. Once the elders who are speaking the dialect will pass away, then we believe that our beloved dialect will become endangered. So there is a need to instill among the youth the love of culture so as to ensure its continuation and propagation.
Nenang nasingat ka Anang musik Dalam pamagidunita Sinakilala ko Ikinagim do iyawa mo Iyawa mo
Nakakalungkot po isipin na nawawala na po ang aming dialektong Ibanag dahil lahat ng mga bata ay puro Tagalog na ang wika at wala nang marunong magsalita masyado itong aming pinakamamahal na wikang Ibanag. Not all children, for example, know that Tuguegarao derived its name from the Ibanag sentence Tugigariao, meaning this used to be fire, as it is believed that the place was once carved out of the wilderness of fire, nor the origin of the word Ibanag. Simply Ibanag, which means I as people of, and Banag, which means river. The Ibanags have their own unique language called Ibanag itself. The same. While the word Ibanag, which refers to the people, starts with I, the dialect starts with the letter Y. So the same word, but starts with I and Y. Some words in the language were adopted from Spanish words. That's why some Spanish words have the equivalent meaning in Ibanag, just like puerta, which means door, and silya, which means share. The primary source of living of the Ibanags are through planting, tobacco, fishing, and farming. And the Spaniards influence us, the Ibanags, in many aspects like religion. They introduced Roman Catholicism, and until now, most of us, the Ibanags, practice our faith. Tuguegarao is home to one of the largest churches in Cagayan Valley, the St. Peter's Cathedral, which is the seat of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Tuguegarao, and the Ermita de San Jacinto, an elevated historic chapel established in 1604, 100 years older than the St. Peter's Cathedral. The oldest brick structure in the city is the first parochial building built by the Dominican fathers in Tuguegarao. There are many practices, customs, and beliefs of the Ibanag community. You will know many treasured culture about the Ibanags, but sadly, these traditions are slowly fading. Although some Ibanag people in Isabela still practice the traditions and practices being passed on by their ancestors. These practices are being done according to the situation. Dahil na rin sa presensya ng iba't ibang mga tao na nanirahan sa syudad, may mga Ilocano, Pangasinense, Chinese, at mga Koreans. The city, being a melting pot, Tuguegarao is a hodgepodge of different cultures and traditions as well. Kaya naman hanggang ngayon, pinagdadebatehan pa rin po kung anong masasabing opisyal na tradisyonal na kasuotan ng mga Ibanag, maging ang mismong kulay nito. Ganon din sa tradisyong pagpapakasal dito sa aming probinsya na tinatawag naming maskota, kung saan sumasayaw at kumakanta ang mga matatanda, kasabay ang isang dasal para sa mas masaganang pagsisimula ng mag-asawa. Sa ngayon, marami ang hindi na nagsasagawa ng tradisyong ito dahil na rin sa modernisasyon o kaya ang ilan naman ay nahihiya na humingi ng kontribusyon mula sa mga bisita para sa bagong mag-asawa. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, this is the Mascota. Mascota is a beautiful couple dance performed during wedding celebrations among the Ibanag people of northeastern Philippines. The Ibanag people inhabit a large part of the Cagayan province. The mascota as a wedding dance is aimed to solicit money from visitors and relatives that could be helpful in the newly-wed couple's finances as they start their lives together. There is a beautiful fast habanera, almost similar to the Ilocana Anasudi song that is sung while the mascota dance is performed. A male and female singer sings lines alternately to accompany the dancers. The lyrics of the song may tackle from the parent-in-law's eagerness to welcome a new addition to the family or simple countenance from married couples or married relatives. The mascota is said to have derived its name from a style of skirt that has become popular during the Spanish times. The mascota skirt is a formal skirt which has a longer train as compared to the saya de cola. The favorite textile for the mascota are big checkered ones and those with large floral motifs. Like many other cultures, the Ibanags also have similar beliefs. Ibanags value the tradition of respect of elders. As the saying, respect begets respect. Ibanag people must greet Diyos Afu before entering a house or passing by. It is a sign of respect and acknowledgement to a person, especially to the older people. Diyos Afu is an Ibanag word which means or the equivalent of mano po in Tagalog. Strict parents or grandparents will scold their child if he or she forgets to greet. But sadly, nowadays, young people do not practice this anymore. Another practice is what Ibanags call ikattag, which is a common practice among the Ibanags. When a person experiences a nightmare, then he or she should hit a tree that bears sour fruit using a bolo. Ibanags believe that doing ikattag will prevent the bad dream from happening. Also, the traditional Ibanag delicacies are not served anymore as malls and fast foods have become the staple. However, the city continues to promote pansit batil potun, a special noodle cooked with beef and egg on top with soup. The Pansit Festival is also celebrated within the Afi Festival, the main event of Tuguegarao during its annual patronal fiesta celebration. With the Afi Festival meaning fire, festival, which came from the word Tugigariao, meaning this used to be fire. Festivals will never vanish inside the hearts of the Ibanags because it is an act of thanksgiving to the bountiful life God has given to them. Ibanags have different festivals to celebrate, and we in Tuguegarao City celebrate Pansit Festival within a fee festival. And we are especially proud that while we are trying to maintain our culture and traditions, some are slowly fading away, and the elders which possess these practices have gone, and their young children were simply modernized or not interested with it.
Ibanag,
Numbers.
Taday, Dua, Tallu, Apa, Lima, Annam, Pitu, Walu, Siyam, Mafulu. Amami nga madyat talangi, marayaw para ingagam mo, maparatal ni kami ipapatulam mo, makwai orem tatavun, tapon ne talangi, ikanami takagaggaw, iyawa mo ni kami taggawaw. Anapakoma mo ikatagarulyam ni, takon na, pamakoma mi ta nakatagurili ni kami. Ariyak kami papasifu ta pangakak ka, napalyarak kami ta de na maraki.
We in the city government are grateful to different individuals who have the passion and love for heritage to help revive the dying Ibanag culture. We have partners to revive our heritage being the regional center. Nasa aming lungsod po ang Cagayan Valley Museum, mga universidad na nagsusulong ng sining at kultura, at ang lokal na pamahalaan sa iba't ibang mga bayan sa probinsya ng Cagayan ay pilit binubuhay ang pagmamahal sa sining at kultura. Ngayon po sa Philippine Arts Summit na ito, our very own Tuguegarao City is proud to be a part and is prouder still to take part and be one with you to promote the love and passion for culture and the arts. Thank you sa TSKP, tagapagtaguyod ng sining at kultura ng Pilipinas. Mula po sa Tuguegarao City, mula po sa mga Ibanag, Itawis, Ilocano, mabuhay po ang TSKP, mabuhay po ang kulturang Ibanag, Itawis, Ilocano at ang buong kulturang Pilipino. Diyos imabalo.